Caroline whispered over the silverware. "Just a few drops in her tea. She'll sign anything then." My son said nothing. His silence was permission enough. I stood in the doorway. My teacup shook. The sound cut through their laughter like glass. I set it down, breathed thin, felt my heart fold. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. They thought I was in the kitchen, rolling dinner rolls, humming like the mother they remembered. But voices carry, especially whispers meant to stay hidden. Caroline's voice drifted down the hall. Light, rehearsed, too bright for evening. She told Daniel to put drops in my chamomile tea. Just a few, to make me relaxed. Agreeable. A notary was coming. Papers needed signing. I stood still. My hand gripped the pan. My reflection stared back from the oven glass. Old, trembling, betrayed. My heartbeat didn't race. It sank, heavy, like carrying stones. They were talking about drugging me. Their mother, their grandmother. I counted 10 steps to the dining room. Each one deliberate, each one final. They arranged forks and knives. Smiling. Perfect hosts preparing perfect deception. Caroline glided to the bar cart. She sang my name like decoration. Evelyn. Sweet. Meaningless. She poured chamomile tea. My favorite, she said. As if love could be measured in teacups. I am 73. I was a librarian for 40 years. I know schemes when I see them. Written on napkins. Whispered over wine. Plotted in the margins of ordinary evenings. I carried water glasses back. Fetched my tea. Returned with steady hands. Then I set my cup beside Caroline's wine. A quiet trade. A calm choice. Nobody noticed. The family arrived. Lucas thumbed his phone. Never looked up. Grace folded napkins with careful hands. My bright granddaughter. The only one who still saw me. Really saw me. The roast steamed. Candles flickered. Caroline raised her glass. She toasted family. Patience. Smoother days ahead. She sipped her wine. I lifted my tea. I didn't drink. I watched instead. Waited. The woman who'd tried to drug her husband's mother. Now drinking what she'd prepared for me. Poetic justice tastes like chamomile. And herbal tincture. And consequences. By the salad course, she was blinking slowly. By the roast, sweat beaded her forehead. She touched her temple. Murmured about being tired. How strange. Her fork hovered midair. Clinked down against the plate. The sound echoed. Sharp. Final. 10 minutes later she wilted. Composed even while collapsing. Image conscious to the end. Daniel stood frozen. His mouth opened. Closed. Like a fish gasping. Grace gasped too. But her eyes found mine. Smart girl. I stood. Carried my untouched tea to the sink. Poured it down the drain. The golden liquid swirled. Disappeared. Like their plans. I said nothing. Sometimes silence cuts deeper than words. The notary texted. Rain delayed her. She would reschedule. Of course she would. I wiped condensation from the table. Watched the evening rearrange itself. Around the empty space where their control used to be. The ambulance came. Red lights painted the dining room walls. Paramedics asked questions. Caroline answered weakly. Food poisoning, she whispered. Must have been something I ate. Yes. Something she ate. Something she'd prepared for someone else. I served them coffee. Black. No sugar. No cream. No extras they hadn't earned. The paramedics were kind. Professional. They loaded Caroline onto a stretcher. Daniel followed like a lost dog. Grace stayed behind. After they left, I washed dishes. Each plate, each glass, each fork that had served deception. The house exhaled, long, uncluttered, free. The night didn't feel triumphant. It felt precise, like surgery, cutting away what was poisoning us all. Grace helped me dry. Her hands shook slightly. She kept looking at me. Questions in her eyes. Later, sweetheart, I said. When the shock wears off. Morning came gray and quiet. I made tea I could trust. Real chamomile. From a box I'd opened myself. No additives. No agenda. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. My passwords live in my head. A woman should unlock her own life. Should know exactly what's in her vault. The accounts bloomed on screen like a garden I'd forgotten I planted. Mortgage payments to Daniel's house. Every month for 6 years. Tuition for Lucas. Private school bills. Subscriptions for Caroline's lifestyle brand. Partnership fees that looked like vanity spending. 73 automatic transfers, all feeding lives that had gently erased mine. One payment at a time. One favor at a time. One emergency that became permanent expectation. I scrolled through months, years, the same names appearing, the same amounts disappearing, my money flowing out like blood from a slow wound. I called the bank. The morning shift answered. Professional, polite. I gave my account information. Spoke clearly. Suspend every recurring payment, I said. Every single one. My voice belonged to a woman I'd kept quiet too long. The representative asked if I was sure. Yes, I said. Read them back to me. She did. All 73. I confirmed each one. Then closed the laptop like shutting a heavy book. Grace texted immediately. Grandma, are you okay? Last night was strange. Mom's in the hospital. Dad won't talk. I typed back truth I could offer. I'm all right, sweetheart. We'll talk soon. Come after school. I made a second list. The way librarians do. Dates. Numbers. Patterns. Evidence carefully organized. Not vengeance. Documentation. Down payment loan never repaid. $15,000. Check number 2847. October 2018. Private school bills I quietly covered. Lucas's tuition arrears. $7,000. Multiple payments. Caroline's medical expenses during her brand pivot. Cosmetic procedures disguised as health needs. Wellness retreats. Business coaching. Investment opportunities that evaporated like morning mist. I thought kindness could knit families together. Stitch us into something whole. But kindness without respect is just currency. And they'd spent me like pocket change. I found Daniel's folder. My careful handwriting on the tab. Inside were copies of checks. Carbon paper impressions. Thank you notes beside figures that should have required real gratitude. Love you, Mom, scrawled on birthday cards. Then requests in the margins. Just until we get back on track. Always getting back on track. Never arriving. I placed the folder on the table. Set my teacup on top. A paperweight for a finished chapter. Everything in me stopped floating. Settled. Found solid ground. The phone buzzed. Daniel texting about suspended payments. Phone plan down? Internet cut off? I set it face down. Made myself breakfast for one. Set a second plate across from me. Empty. A reminder that emptiness isn't loneliness. Sometimes it's freedom. I sliced cherry tart I'd bought yesterday. For Grace. She loves unnecessary sweetness. The kind of joy they'd tried to drug out of me. The kind that survives. The crust held firm. Buttery. Honest. Like I planned to be. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Thomas Avery has been writing wills since courthouse radiators burned coal. His office sits above the bakery. Same building for 40 years. Same leather chairs. Same steady hands. He drafted mine after my husband died. When leaving everything to Daniel felt natural. Like breathing. Like trusting your own child wouldn't try to poison you. I called his office Tuesday morning. Asked for an appointment. His receptionist knew my voice. Of course, Ms. Hart. He'll be glad to see you. I dressed carefully. Navy dress. Pearl earrings. The armor of respectability. Some battles require uniforms. The walk downtown took 20 minutes. Past the bakery where I'd bought yesterday's tart. The flower shop with yellow mums. The bank where I'd cut the money line. Each step felt like shedding skin. Old expectations. Old obligations. Old versions of myself. Thomas's office smelled like leather and old paper. Serious smells. Permanent smells. Law books lined the walls. Witnesses to decades of human folly. He poured coffee in china cups. Real cream. Real sugar. Asked how I was holding up. His eyes were kind. Lawyer careful but genuinely concerned. I told him the story. No decoration. No drama. Just facts lined up like evidence in a trial. The tea. The notary. The word agreeable whispered over silverware. Caroline in the hospital. Daniel silent. Grace asking questions. When I finished, he set down his fountain pen. The gold nib caught morning light. He looked at me with 40 years of legal experience. Do you want to pursue charges? He asked gently. No, I said. The word came out clean. Final. I never wanted spectacle. I wanted spine. Criminal court means publicity. Newspaper stories. Family drama spread across headlines. That's not justice. That's theater. We spread my old will between us. Yellow paper. Blue ink faded but still binding. Daniel's name everywhere like a signature on my soul. Currently he's sole beneficiary, Thomas said. He holds your power of attorney if you become incapacitated. The word sat heavy. Incapacitated. Like a broken appliance. Something to be fixed. Or discarded. Would you like to change that? He asked. Yes, I said. Remove him from everything. Every role. Every authority. Every claim on my life. I want Grace as beneficiary. And health proxy too. She's 16 but she sees clearly. More clearly than adults twice her age. I want a trust for her education. Housing. A future with guardrails. Protection from parents who see inheritance as early Christmas. You as trustee, I added. Independent. No access for her parents. No co-signers. No back doors they can jimmy open. Thomas nodded. Made notes in careful script. Lawyer's handwriting. Precise. Permanent. It can be done, he said. He pulled out forms. Fresh paper. Clean starts written in legal language. We worked through each section. Each clause. Each protection. For 2 hours I initialed papers. Signed my name over and over. Watched words reposition my life. Like furniture in a house finally mine. The door clicked softly when I left. The street smelled like fresh bread. Yeast and hope rising together. I bought another cherry tart from the bakery. Grace would visit today. At home I reheated last night's roast. Set one plate at my usual spot. Put another across from me. Empty. A reminder that loneliness and emptiness are different things. Loneliness aches. Emptiness breathes. My phone buzzed. Daniel texting about the phone plan being down. Internet disconnected. Credit cards declined. Question marks and confusion. I set it face down. Sliced the tart instead. Let him wonder. Let him calculate. Let him learn what consequences taste like. Good crust holds. I decided I would too. The afternoon brought more work. Another list. This one longer. More detailed. More devastating. 27 years of automatic payments spread across my dining table. Mortgage help. Credit card minimums. Insurance premiums. Car repairs. Vacation deposits they called family bonding. Emergency loans that became permanent gifts. Business investments that evaporated. Partnership fees for ventures that folded before launching. I'd kept receipts. Bank statements. Thank you cards with figures that should have meant something. Should have required real gratitude instead of casual expectation. Daniel's handwriting on birthday cards. Love you, Mom. Then requests in the margins. Just until we get back on track. Always getting back on track. Never arriving at any destination. 27 years of track they never found. Never even looked for. I sorted the papers by year. Made neat stacks. The evidence of being slowly consumed. One payment at a time. One favor that became obligation. Caroline's medical bills from her brand Pivot. Cosmetic procedures disguised as wellness. Self-care that cost someone else's savings. Lucas's summer camp. Daniel's professional coaching. Partnership fees for businesses that existed only on paper. My savings account balance in 2010. Comfortable. Secure. Then 2015. Smaller but still solid. Then 2020. Threadbare. Nearly empty. A steady decline disguised as family love. Death by 1,000 kindnesses. I'd worked 40 years. Saved carefully. Lived simply. Denied myself small luxuries. So they could live carelessly. Spend thoughtlessly. Take endlessly. The stacks grew taller. The dining table disappeared under paper. Under proof. Under the archaeology of my own slow disappearance. I made more tea. Sat among the evidence. Breathed slowly. This wasn't anger. This was excavation. Digging up a self I'd buried under their needs. Outside, the mailman whistled. The neighbor's dog barked. Life continued its ordinary rhythm. While I unearthed mine, Grace texted again. Can I come over after school? Something felt wrong about last night. About everything lately. Yes, I typed back. Bring your homework. We'll talk. About everything. I cleared half the table. Left the other half covered. Some truths need witnesses. Even 16-year-old ones. Especially 16-year-old ones. The cherry tart sat waiting. Sweet. Patient. Honest in its simplicity. Like the life I was planning to build. From scratch. From truth. From the woman I'd forgotten I could be. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Grace arrived at 3:30. School bag heavy on her shoulder. Eyes heavy with questions. She knocked once. Then used her key. The key I'd given her 2 years ago. When Caroline said 16 was too young for house keys. Too young for responsibility. Too young for trust. Too young for everything except inheriting her grandmother's money. Grace set her bag by the door. Looked at the dining table. Half cleared. Half covered with evidence. Her face went very still. What is all this? She asked quietly. The truth, I said. Sit down. She pulled out her usual chair. The one with the small burn mark from a Christmas candle. 2019. Before everything shifted. Before I became an ATM with a pulse. I poured her milk. Added 2 chocolate chip cookies to a small plate. The ritual we'd maintained through years of family chaos. Some things stay sacred, even when everything else crumbles. I told her about the tea, the notary, the whispered plan to make me agreeable. Her mother's word, agreeable like livestock. Grace listened without flinching. Her hands stayed folded. Her eyes stayed steady. She'd inherited steadiness from somewhere. Not from her parents. I told her about the automatic payments. 27 years of slow bleeding. Her college fund emptied for her father's emergencies. Her mother's brand pivots. Her brother's expensive indifference. When I finished, she was quiet. The kitchen clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Normal sounds in an abnormal moment. I noticed when I was 10, she said finally. The way Mom corrected you. Like you were getting everything wrong. The way Dad let it happen. Let her treat you like hired help. Smart girl. Too smart for her own family. She picked up one of the bank statements. Her finger traced the columns. Payment after payment flowing away from me. Toward them. How much? She asked. Total? I'd calculated it that morning. Over $300,000. Her inheritance. Her future. Fed to their present. She set the paper down carefully. Her hands didn't shake. Mine might have at 16. But she was steadier than I'd been. Steadier than I'd raised her father to be. What happens now? She asked. Now you have choices, I said. You can stay angry at them. Or disappointed. Or you can just live your life differently. Better choices. Better boundaries. Better people around you. She nodded. Sipped her milk. Ate half a cookie with deliberate bites. The trust fund, I continued. It's in your name now. Education. Housing when you're ready. But not for them. Not ever for them. Thomas Avery manages it. Independent trustee. Your parents can't touch it. Can't borrow against it. Can't charm their way into it. Good, she said. The word came out flat. Final. Like she'd been waiting years to say it. We sat in kitchen quiet. Late afternoon sun slanted through windows. Made dust motes dance like tiny planets. Everything felt suspended. Waiting. Your father texted me this morning, I said. The bank cut everything off. Phone. Internet. Credit cards declined at the grocery store. He's confused. Can't understand why his personal ATM stopped working. Grace almost smiled. Almost. The ghost of satisfaction flickered across her face. Will you forgive them? She asked. Forgiveness isn't the right word, I said. Forgiveness assumes they did something by accident. This was planned. Calculated. Discussed over dinner while I made their dessert. But I won't carry hatred. Hatred is heavy. I'm 73. I don't have energy for heavy things anymore. What I have is clarity. They showed me who they are. I believed them. Grace finished her cookie. Brushed crumbs from her fingers. Precise movements. Nothing wasted. Can I still live here sometimes? She asked. When it gets bad at home. Of course, I said. This is your home too. More than theirs now. She nodded. Pulled homework from her bag. Calculus and chemistry. The future spreading out in equations and formulas. I made dinner while she worked. Simple food. Honest ingredients. Chicken roasted with herbs from my garden. Potatoes that didn't require anyone's approval. She stayed until 8. Helped with dishes. Kissed my cheek before leaving. Her lips were warm. Real. Unlike the performance kisses her parents gave. After she left, I walked through my house. Really looked at it. For the first time in years. The gray curtains Caroline called sophisticated. Down they came. Folded into a donation bag. The neutral throw pillows that matched nothing I loved. Into the bag. The coffee table books about minimalism and intentional living. Ironic gifts from people who'd maximally consumed my resources. Into the bag. I found the floral curtains I'd stored in the basement. The ones Caroline mocked as outdated. Grandma curtains, she'd laughed. So cheerfully cutting. I hung them back up. They smelled like cedar and memories. Like the woman I'd been before I started performing motherhood for an ungrateful audience. Morning light looked different through them. Warmer. More honest. Like everything else I was reclaiming. The phone rang at 9. Daniel's number on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then played it back. Mom, we need to talk. Things are really tight right now. Caroline's medical bills. My car payment bounced. I don't understand what's happening. I deleted the message. Made myself tea with real chamomile. Sat in my reclaimed living room with my reclaimed curtains. Understanding would come. Eventually. When desperation taught them what I'd tried to teach with kindness. Some lessons can't be bought. Only earned. The house felt different around me. Bigger. Like walls had moved outward. Like rooms had exhaled. I wasn't lonely. I was spacious. Tomorrow I would call my cousin Margaret. The one I'd lost touch with during the years of managing everyone else's crises. The one who sent Christmas cards with handwritten notes. Real notes. About real things. Not requests disguised as affection. I would plant flower seeds in the front yard. Wildflowers that didn't need permission to bloom. That couldn't be arranged into someone else's vision of appropriate. I would cook meals I wanted to eat. Read books that interested me. Take long baths without wondering if someone needed something. I would remember how to be alone without being abandoned. The cherry tart sat on the counter. Half eaten. Still sweet. Still honest. Like the life I was building. One deliberate choice at a time. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening quiet. Porch lights flickered on. Children called in for baths and bedtime stories. Normal life continuing its gentle rhythms. While I figured out how to join it again. As myself. Not as someone's convenient solution. Not as anyone's agreeable anything. Just Evelyn. Finally. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Daniel arrived Thursday afternoon without warning. His sedan pulled into my driveway like entitlement on wheels. Engine ticking as it cooled. The sound of assumptions dying. I watched from my kitchen window. He sat in the car for 5 minutes. Checking his phone. Adjusting his tie. Building courage he should have inherited. When he finally walked to my door, his shoulders were set. His jaw tight. He looked like his father before difficult conversations. Before admitting mistakes. But his father had been honest about his failures. Daniel just repackaged them as circumstances. He knocked twice. Sharp. Impatient. Then used his key. The key I'd forgotten he still had. The key I would change tomorrow. Mom, he called. We need to talk. I was folding laundry in the living room. Towels that smelled like sunshine. Simple pleasure from simple tasks. I didn't look up. I'm busy, I said. He stepped into the doorway. Filled it with his presence. His need. His barely controlled desperation. You cut off everything, he said. Phone. Internet. The mortgage payment bounced. Caroline's medical bills are overdue. I folded another towel. Precise corners. Even edges. Control I could actually exercise. Yes, I said. Why? The word came out strangled. Like confusion had hands around his throat. You know why, I answered. I set the towel on the neat stack. Picked up a washcloth. Began folding it with the same care. The same attention. He moved into the room. Uninvited. Like he'd done for 27 years. Taking space that wasn't offered. Assuming welcome that wasn't extended. Look, Mom. Caroline was stressed. She didn't mean to. Drug me? I looked up then. Met his eyes for the first time. Saw myself reflected there. Small. Dismissible. The way he'd learned to see me. The way I'd taught him to see me. She thought it would help, he continued. Make dinner more peaceful. You've been so difficult lately. Difficult. The word sat between us like evidence. I'd become difficult by having boundaries. By saying no. By existing as something other than their solution. I've been awake, I said. There's a difference. He shifted weight from foot to foot. The way he had as a child. When caught in lies too big to manage. Things are tight right now, he said. We're behind on everything. Lucas needs school supplies. Grace has college applications coming up. Always the children. Always their needs justifying his choices. As if good intentions could launder theft. Grace has a trust fund now, I said. Managed by Thomas Avery. For her education. Her future. Not yours. His face went pale. Then flushed. Anger and panic fighting for control. You can't do that, he said. I already did. But I'm your son. I'm family. Family doesn't drug family, I said. Family doesn't whisper about making someone agreeable so they'll sign papers. He started to speak. Stopped. Started again. The words kept catching on something. Maybe conscience. Maybe just surprise. You switched the cups, he said finally. You knew. I knew, I confirmed. For how long? Long enough. I stood up. Carried the folded laundry to the linen closet. He followed like a shadow I couldn't shake. Mom, I'm sorry. We both are. It was stupid. Desperate. But we can fix this. Fix. Like we were a broken appliance. Like enough apologies could reset 27 years of taking. Some things can't be fixed, I said. Only replaced. I closed the linen closet. Turned to face him. My son. The man I'd raised to be better than this. Somewhere I'd failed. Somewhere he'd learned that love was currency. That mothers were renewable resources. Please, he said. The word came out quiet. Almost lost. Caroline's in therapy now. Real therapy. Not life coaching. She knows she messed up. We both do. I walked to the kitchen. Put the kettle on. 1 cup of tea. Not 2. He followed me there too. Stood by the counter where he used to do homework. Where I used to help him with math problems that had clear solutions. This isn't a math problem. This isn't something you can solve by showing your work. The kettle began to whistle. I poured water into my cup. Watched the tea bag darken the water. Like truth seeping through lies. What do you want from me? He asked. Nothing, I said. That's the point. But that's not. You can't just. We're family. He kept saying that word. Family. Like a magic spell. Like it could undo planning to drug his mother. Family is earned, I said. Daily. Through choices. Through respect. Through seeing each other as human beings instead of problems to solve. You saw me as a problem, Daniel. An obstacle to your plans. Something to be managed with herbal tinctures and notaries. I'm not a problem. I'm your mother. There's a difference. He leaned against the counter. His face crumpled slightly. The way it had when he was 12 and broke our neighbor's window. But then he'd owned the mistake. Apologized without explanations. Worked to pay for the repair. When had he stopped taking responsibility? When had everything become someone else's fault? I can change, he said. Maybe, I said, but you'll do it without my money. Without my house as backup. Without me as your safety net. You'll learn to swim. Or you won't. But I'm done being your life preserver." He was quiet then. The kitchen filled with silence and steam from my tea. Outside, children played in someone else's yard. Their laughter filtered through glass. Normal sounds of normal life. Life that didn't revolve around crisis and rescue. "Can I still visit?" he asked finally. "When you're invited," I said. "No more keys. No more assumptions. No more showing up because you need something. Show up because you want to see me. Because you miss my company. Because you love me without agenda." He nodded slowly, like understanding was settling into his bones. Like 35 years of childhood was finally ending. "I'm sorry, Mom. Really sorry." "I know," I said. "But sorry is just the beginning. Not the end." He left through the front door. Walked slowly to his car. Sat there again for several minutes before driving away. I watched from my kitchen window. The same window where I'd seen him arrive. But something had shifted. The light looked different. Cleaner. I finished my tea. Washed the cup. Dried it. Put it back in the cupboard. One cup. Clean. Ready for tomorrow. Like me. That evening I called Margaret. My cousin who sent Christmas cards with real news. Who remembered my birthday without calendar reminders. Her voice was warm. Surprised. Delighted. We talked for an hour. About her grandchildren. My garden. Books we'd read. Small things that felt enormous. No one asked for money. No one needed rescuing. No one treated love like a transaction. Just two women. Talking. Reconnecting. Being family the way family should be. When I hung up, the house felt full. Not empty. Not lonely. Full of possibility. I made a list for tomorrow. Plant wildflower seeds. Change the locks. Call Grace about weekend plans. Simple tasks. Simple pleasures. Simple life reclaimed from complicated people. The phone rang once. Daniel's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then deleted it without listening. Some conversations are finished, even when the other person hasn't realized it yet. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening quiet. Porch lights came on. Families gathered around dinner tables. I heated leftover soup. Sat at my table. Alone but not lonely. For the first time in years, I ate dinner that no one else had planned. Needed. Demanded. Requested. I ate dinner that was entirely mine. It tasted like freedom. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Daniel's letter arrived on Saturday. Handwritten. Blue ink on cream paper. The kind of effort that costs something. I found it slipped under my door. Coward's delivery. No knock. No doorbell. No facing the woman he'd tried to drug. I made coffee first. Real coffee in my husband's favorite mug. The one with the chip on the handle. The one Caroline called shabby. Some things are shabby. Some things are loved. There's a difference. I sat at my kitchen table. Opened the envelope with my mother's letter opener. Silver blade worn smooth by decades of truth and lies. The letter was 3 pages. Dense handwriting. Words crowded together like apologies at a funeral. "Mom," it began. "I've been thinking about everything. About what we did. What I let happen. Let happen." As if he'd been a bystander to his own choices. He wrote about his childhood. The smell of my coffee on Sunday mornings. The song I hummed while he recovered from flu. The way I packed his lunch with notes inside. Memory as manipulation. Nostalgia as currency. The past deployed to purchase forgiveness. "I'm ashamed," he continued. "Caroline and I talked for hours after you cut us off. We both know we crossed a line. Several lines. Lines. Like boundaries were simple geometry. Like respect was something you could map. The letter meandered through explanations. Caroline's pressure. Financial stress. His own weakness in the face of both. Always external forces. Never internal choices. Never the simple decision to see his mother as human. I know you're angry, he wrote. I know we hurt you. I know trust takes time to rebuild. Trust. He thought this was about trust. Like a broken promise between friends. Like something that could be glued back together with good intentions. This wasn't about trust. This was about dignity. About seeing me as something other than an obstacle to overcome. We're getting help, the letter continued. Caroline found a therapist. Not a life coach. Real therapy. We're talking about boundaries. About respect. Words they'd learned in therapy. Vocabulary without understanding. Like tourists speaking phrases they'd memorized. I want to earn my way back into your life, he concluded. I know it won't be easy. I know it will take time. But I'm willing to do the work. The work. As if relationships were construction projects. As if love could be rebuilt with the right tools. I folded the letter once. Twice. Set it on the table beside my coffee. Steam rose between us. His words and my silence. Outside, the locksmith was arriving. Right on time. Professional. Efficient. No explanations needed. I watched him work through the kitchen window. Drilling out old locks. Installing new ones. Simple solutions to simple problems. People are more complicated than doors. But sometimes the same principles apply. When he finished, he handed me 3 new keys. Brass bright as possibility. Heavy with purpose. Keep them safe, he said. I will, I promised. After he left, I walked through my house. Tested each lock. Solid. Secure. Mine. Then I drove to Grace's school. After school pickup. The ritual we'd maintained through family chaos. She slid into my passenger seat with relief. Dropped her backpack like she was shedding weight. How was your day? I asked. Long, she said. Mom and Dad are fighting about money. Again. Dad keeps saying you're being unreasonable. Unreasonable. The word followed me everywhere. Like a shadow I couldn't shake. Maybe I am, I said. Maybe reasonable got me into this mess. Grace smiled at that. A real smile. Not the performance kind her parents specialized in. We drove to the ice cream shop. Ordered sundaes with extra chocolate. Sat by the window watching ordinary life happen outside. Families walking dogs. Couples holding hands. Children chasing bubbles someone was blowing from a storefront. Normal afternoon scenes. The kind I'd forgotten existed beyond crisis and manipulation. Grace ate thoughtfully, savoring each bite. She'd inherited patience from somewhere. Not from her parents. Grandma, she said between spoonfuls, are you lonely? The question surprised me. Direct. Honest. The way children ask before adults teach them to lie. Sometimes, I said. But lonely and alone are different things. Lonely aches. Alone just is. She nodded like this made sense. Like she understood the mathematics of solitude. I'm alone a lot at home now, she said. They're always in their bedroom. Talking in whispers. Making plans. Plans that probably involved me. My money. My weakness. My eventual surrender. You can come to my house anytime, I said. After school. Weekends. Whenever you need space. Really? Really. I had new locks installed today. You'll get the only spare key. Her eyes widened. Like I'd offered her citizenship in a country she'd always wanted to visit. We finished our ice cream in comfortable quiet. The kind that doesn't need filling with words. Later, I dropped her at home. Watched her walk to the door. Noticed how her shoulders tensed as she approached. How her steps slowed. Home shouldn't require courage, but sometimes it does. Back at my house, I found 2 more messages from Daniel. Voicemails asking if I'd gotten his letter. If we could talk. If I understood how sorry he was. I deleted them without listening completely. Partial words. Incomplete apologies. Static between us growing wider. Evening came early. October light fading faster each day. I made soup for one. Crusty bread with real butter. Simple food that didn't need approval. Margaret called while I was eating. Her voice warm through the phone. She'd been thinking about our conversation yesterday. Would I like to visit this weekend? Yes, I said immediately. Yes, I would. We made plans. Simple ones. Farmer's market Saturday morning. Antique shops afterward. Dinner at the place with good pie. Normal plans with normal people. No hidden agendas. No financial requests disguised as invitations. After we hung up, I reread Daniel's letter. 3 pages of words that changed nothing. Explained everything. Promised transformation they weren't capable of delivering. I walked to my fireplace. The one I rarely used anymore. Laid kindling in a neat stack. Struck a match. Fire caught quickly. Eager flames consuming dry wood. I watched until it burned steady and bright. Then I fed Daniel's letter to the flames. Page by page. Blue ink curling into ash. Words disappearing into smoke. Some conversations end with fire. Some relationships too. The flames reflected in my windows. Golden light against dark glass. Beautiful and final. I sat in my chair. Watched the fire burn down to coals. Felt something settle in my chest. Not anger. Not sadness. Peace. The kind that comes after difficult decisions. After choosing yourself over everyone else's expectations. The house was quiet around me. But not empty. Full of possibility. Full of choice. Full of a life finally my own. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening. Porch lights flickered on. Families gathered for dinner they'd planned together. I was alone. But not lonely. Not anymore. Alone felt like freedom. Like space to breathe. Like room to become whoever I'd been before I became everyone else's solution. The fire died to embers. I banked them carefully. Turned off the lights. Climbed stairs that creaked familiar songs. In my bedroom, I looked out the window. At the street where I'd lived for 30 years. Where I'd raised a son who'd tried to drug me. Where I'd learned that love without boundaries becomes servitude. That kindness without limits becomes exploitation. Where I'd finally learned to say no. And mean it. Tomorrow I would plant wildflower seeds. Visit Margaret. Make plans that didn't include rescue or crisis. Tonight I would sleep in a house with new locks. In a bed that belonged only to me. In a life I'd finally reclaimed. One boundary at a time. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Sunday morning arrived with frost on the windows. October claiming its territory. The kind of cold that makes you grateful for warm houses. I made coffee in my husband's mug. The chipped one. The shabby one that held love better than Caroline's expensive designer cups. Margaret would arrive at noon. My cousin who remembered my birthday. Who sent real Christmas cards with handwritten notes inside. Real notes. About real life. Not requests disguised as affection. I had 3 hours to plant wildflower seeds. 3 hours to claim the front yard Caroline had criticized for years. Too messy, she'd said. Too wild. What will the neighbors think? The neighbors would think I'd finally stopped performing propriety for people who drugged tea. I found my old seed packets in the basement. Mixed wildflowers, cosmos, black-eyed Susans, flowers that didn't need permission to bloom. The morning air bit at my cheeks. Sharp, clean, honest in its coldness. I scattered seeds across the front yard, handful by handful, each one a small rebellion against manicured expectations. Some would grow, some wouldn't, like relationships, like choices, like second chances you stopped offering. The mailman walked by as I worked. Waved from the sidewalk. "Nice to see you gardening again," he called. Again. Like I'd been absent from my own life. Like I was just now returning to myself. Maybe I was. Inside, I showered off dirt and decision. Dressed in colors Caroline called too bright. Purple sweater. Green scarf. The armor of visibility. For years I'd dressed in neutral tones. Beige. Gray. Colors that didn't draw attention. Didn't make requests. Didn't take up space. Today I took up space. Deliberately. Unapologetically. Margaret's car pulled up at 12 exactly. Same punctuality she'd inherited from our grandmother. Same respect for other people's time. She stepped out smiling. Silver hair catching sunlight. Face lined with 70 years of honest living. We hugged on my front porch. Real embrace. Not the performance hugs Daniel's family specialized in. "Look at you," she said. "You look lighter somehow. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying invisible weight. Like I'd finally set it down." We drove to the farmer's market in her sensible sedan. Windows cracked for fresh air. Radio playing soft jazz that didn't compete with conversation. The market bustled with weekend energy. Families buying pumpkins. Couples selecting apples. Normal people living normal lives. I'd forgotten how normal felt. How uncomplicated life could be without constant crisis management. Margaret bought honey from a local beekeeper. I chose a small pumpkin with a crooked stem. Imperfect. Beautiful. Like everything real. We walked between stalls. Talked about ordinary things. Her grandchildren's school plays. Books she'd been reading. The weather turning cold. No one asked for money. No one mentioned emergencies. No one treated our relationship like a business transaction. Just two women. Cousins. Friends reconnecting after years of distance. At the antique shop, I found a small ceramic pitcher. Blue flowers on white porcelain. Cracked along one side but still holding water. Still useful. Still beautiful. Like many things Caroline would have discarded. Margaret bought vintage postcards. Views of places she'd visited decades ago. Memory made tangible. We had lunch at the diner with red vinyl booths. Ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup. Food that didn't require sophistication or approval. Over coffee, Margaret asked about my family. Carefully, like stepping around broken glass. I told her the truth. The tea, the notary, the 27 years of financial bleeding. Her face grew still as I spoke. Not shocked. Saddened. Like she'd suspected something was wrong. "I should have called more," she said quietly. "Should have stayed closer." I knew Caroline was difficult. Difficult. The word everyone used. Like my boundaries were the problem. Like my resistance to being drugged was unreasonable. "You couldn't have known," I said. I hid it well. Pride, maybe. Or shame. Margaret reached across the table. Covered my hand with hers. Warm fingers. Real comfort. "You're not responsible for other people's choices," she said. "Even your son's. Especially your son's." We sat in comfortable silence. The diner hummed around us. Coffee cups clinking. Conversations weaving together like ordinary music. This is what I'd been missing. Connection without agenda. Love without invoice. Relationship as refuge, not resource. That evening, Margaret helped me cook dinner. Simple food prepared together. Roast chicken with herbs from my garden. Potatoes that didn't require anyone's approval. We talked while we worked. About our mothers, our marriages, the choices that had shaped us. She'd lost her husband 5 years ago. Learned to live alone without being lonely. Found peace in solitude I was just discovering. Some lessons take time, she said. Some strength only comes after you've been broken. After dinner, we sat by my fireplace. I'd learned to enjoy fire again. After burning Daniel's letter, flames felt like transformation instead of destruction. Margaret pulled out photos of her grandchildren. Real pictures. Not posed performances. Children being children. Messy. Honest. Loved. Grace should meet them, she suggested. When she's ready. Young people need to see healthy families. Need to know what normal looks like. Normal. I was learning that word again. Learning what it meant to live without constant emergency. Margaret left Sunday evening with promises to visit again soon. Real promises. Not the empty kind people make to end uncomfortable conversations. I walked through my quiet house after she left. Really looked at it. With new locks. New curtains. New sense of ownership. This was mine. My space. My choices. My life reclaimed from people who'd treated it like community property. Grace texted around 9. Asked about my weekend. I told her about Margaret. The market. The seeds I'd planted. She texted back a heart emoji. Simple. Honest. The only approval I needed. Before bed, I checked my front yard. Seeds scattered in dark soil. Waiting for spring. Waiting for permission only nature could grant. Some would grow. Some wouldn't. But they'd grow honestly. Without pretense. Without apology. Like the life I was building. One choice at a time. The house settled around me. Creaks and sighs of old wood finding comfort. Sounds I'd forgotten to hear during years of managing other people's noise. In my bedroom, I opened the window slightly. Let October air whisper through curtains I'd chosen. Air that smelled like possibilities instead of obligations. Tomorrow I would call Thomas Avery. Discuss the trust fund. Make sure Grace's future was protected from parents who saw inheritance as early Christmas. Tomorrow I would continue reclaiming myself. From people who'd mistaken my kindness for weakness. My love for license to take whatever they wanted. Tonight I would sleep in a house with new locks. In a bed that belonged only to me. In a life finally planted in soil I'd chosen. Seeds don't apologize for growing. Neither would I. The window framed stars I hadn't noticed in years. Distant light in comfortable darkness. Like hope. Like healing. Like the woman I was becoming. One seed at a time. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. They arrived together on a Tuesday afternoon. November wind pushing leaves across my newly seeded yard. Daniel and Caroline, side by side like a united front. But their unity felt rehearsed. Practiced. Like lines memorized for a performance I hadn't asked to see. I watched from my kitchen window. They stood by their car for several minutes. Talking in low voices. Building courage or strategy. Maybe both. Caroline looked smaller somehow. Thinner. Like guilt had been eating her from inside. Daniel kept touching her elbow. Guiding, supporting, playing the role of devoted husband. They walked to my porch slowly. Daniel carrying flowers from the grocery store. Carnations dyed unnatural colors. Gas station apology wrapped in cellophane. Caroline wore a coat I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago. Navy wool. Expensive. Purchased during my years of buying their affection. The irony tasted bitter. She was wearing my generosity to apologize for trying to drug me. They knocked softly, respectfully, like they'd learned manners since attempting chemical manipulation. I didn't answer immediately. Let them wait. Let them wonder if I was home. If I was ready. If forgiveness was for sale. Finally I opened the door. Stood in the frame without stepping aside. My space. My choice. My terms. Evelyn, Caroline said. Her voice was smaller too. Less bright. Less rehearsed than usual. We came to apologize, Daniel added. To try to explain. I looked at them both. My son who'd watched his wife plan to drug me. My daughter-in-law who'd whispered about making me agreeable. Come in, I said. Because some conversations require witnesses. Even if it's just furniture and family photos. They followed me to the living room. Sat on the couch like children called to account. Daniel still clutching his grocery store flowers. Caroline spoke first. Her words came slowly, carefully chosen, like walking through a minefield of her own making. I've been in therapy, she said. Real therapy, not life coaching. We're talking about boundaries, about respect, about what I did to you, what she did, as if Daniel had been innocent, as if he'd tried to stop her instead of enabling her. I'm ashamed, she continued. I convinced myself I was helping, making things easier, but I was really just trying to control you. Control. The word sat between us like evidence. Finally someone had named the crime. Daniel shifted beside her, uncomfortable with honesty that didn't flatter him. I should have stopped it, he said quietly. Should have protected you. I'm sorry, Mom. Should have. The past tense of good intentions. The graveyard of missed opportunities. I sat in my chair. The one with the view of my reclaimed living room. My floral curtains. My choices visible in every corner. Why now? I asked. They looked at each other. Silent communication between spouses who'd practiced this conversation. Things are hard, Daniel said. Really hard. We're behind on everything. The house payment. Lucas's school. Grace's college applications. Always the children. Always their needs justifying adult choices. As if being parents excused being criminals. Grace doesn't need your help anymore, I said. She has a trust fund. Managed independently. Protected from you. Caroline's face crumpled slightly, like she was just now understanding the scope of what they'd lost. We know, she whispered. Thomas Avery's office called. About the trust. About changing beneficiaries. Good, I said. He's thorough. Daniel leaned forward. His voice took on the pleading tone I remembered from his childhood. When he'd broken something valuable and wanted mercy instead of consequences. Mom, we're family. We made mistakes. Big ones. But we're trying to change. Trying to be better. Better. Like they were work in progress instead of adults who'd chosen to drug an elderly woman. I've heard this before, I said. After the credit cards were maxed. After the business failed. After the investment disappeared. Always trying. Never arriving. But this is different, Caroline said. I'm getting real help. Understanding why I need to control everything. Why I couldn't just let you be yourself. Let me be myself. as if my identity required her permission, as if I'd been playing a role in my own life. The flowers wilted in Daniel's hands, cheap petals dropping onto my clean floor, like their promises, pretty for a moment, then decay. "What do you want?" I asked. "Nothing," Daniel said quickly. "Just a chance to rebuild. To show you we've changed." Rebuild. Like relationships were construction projects. Like trust could be hammered back together with good intentions. I looked at them sitting on my couch. My son and his wife. People I'd loved, fed, funded, forgiven over and over until forgiveness became expectation. They looked older, worn down by consequences they couldn't charm away, by bills they couldn't pay, by a future without my financial cushion. "I'm not angry," I said finally. They both looked up, hope flickering in their faces like candle flames. "I'm finished," I continued. The hope died, replaced by confusion, then understanding, then something that might have been grief. "But we're family," Caroline said. Her voice broke slightly on the word. "Family doesn't drug family," I replied. "Family doesn't whisper about making someone agreeable. Family doesn't treat love like a business transaction." I stood up, walked to the window overlooking my front yard. Seeds sleeping under November soil. Waiting for spring. Waiting for permission only nature could grant. "You can rebuild yourselves," I said without turning around. "You can change, grow, become different people. But you'll do it without me." They were quiet behind me, the weight of finality settling over them like dust. "I'm not your safety net anymore," I continued. "Not your emergency fund. Not your solution to problems you created. You're adults. Act like it." When I turned around, Caroline was crying. Silent tears that might have been real. Might have been performance. I'd stopped trying to tell the difference. Daniel sat beside her, his arm around shoulders that shook with something. Grief or fear or the realization that consequences couldn't be negotiated away. "You should go," I said. They stood slowly, like old people, like the weight of their choices had aged them decades in months. At the door, Daniel turned back. One last attempt at connection. "I love you, Mom." "I know," I said. "But love isn't enough anymore." They walked to their car without looking back. Drove away leaving tire tracks in leaves I'd have to rake tomorrow. I closed the door, turned the new lock. The sound echoed in my quiet house. Then I picked up the dropped carnation petals, swept them into my palm, carried them to the trash where they belonged. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges burn completely. Some relationships end not with anger but with exhaustion. I was exhausted, tired of being everyone's solution, everyone's last resort, everyone's agreeable mother who could be managed with herbal tinctures. That night I made dinner for one. Heated soup that smelled like comfort. Ate bread that tasted like freedom. Grace texted around 8, asked how my day had been. Quiet, I texted back. Peaceful. Both true. Both gifts I'd given myself. Outside, November wind scattered more leaves across my yard. Across seeds that would sleep through winter. Dreams buried in soil, waiting for spring. Like me. Like the woman I was becoming. Patient. Rooted. Ready to grow in my own season. Some flowers bloom late. But they bloom honestly. In their own time. On their own terms. Just like forgiveness. Just like healing. Just like the life I was finally living for myself. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. December arrived with silence. No phone calls from Daniel. No emergency texts. No manufactured crises requiring my intervention. Just quiet. Beautiful, spacious quiet. I woke each morning to stillness I'd forgotten existed. Made coffee without checking my phone for disaster updates. Ate breakfast without wondering who needed rescuing. The absence of need felt strange at first. Like missing a sound you'd grown accustomed to. The constant hum of other people's problems had been my background music for decades. Now I heard different things. The radiator's gentle hiss. Birds at my feeder. My own breathing, steady and uninterrupted. Grace visited twice a week. After school on Wednesdays. Saturday afternoons. Not because she needed anything. Because she wanted to be there. The difference was everything. She helped me redecorate my bedroom. We painted the walls pale yellow. Sunshine color, she called it. Light that didn't require permission. I bought new bedding. Floral patterns Caroline had mocked as old-fashioned. But flowers don't go out of style. They just bloom honestly, year after year. We hung photos on my dresser. Me and Grace at the farmer's market. Margaret and me laughing over coffee. Pictures of relationships that fed instead of depleted. Real relationships. Based on affection instead of transaction. Lucas had stopped visiting entirely. I wasn't surprised. 16-year-old boys don't cultivate relationships that don't benefit them. He'd learned that lesson well from his parents. But Grace was different. Grace understood that love multiplies when shared freely. Shrinks when hoarded or sold. She brought homework some evenings. Spread calculus and chemistry across my kitchen table. I made hot chocolate while she worked. Not because she asked. Because I wanted to. We were rediscovering the rhythm of voluntary kindness. Care offered without invoice. Love given without keeping score. My house began to feel like home again. Mine. Chosen. Shaped by my preferences instead of other people's demands. I replaced Caroline's neutral throw pillows with ones in jewel tones. Emerald. Sapphire. Ruby. Colors that took up space unapologetically. I hung my grandmother's quilts on the walls. The ones Caroline called dated. But some things improve with age. Gain beauty through survival. Like me, the dining room became my sewing space. I set up my machine by the window. Natural light for mending things that could be repaired. For creating things that didn't exist yet. I started with simple projects. Aprons. Pot holders. Useful things that didn't require anyone's approval. Gradually I grew bolder. A quilt for Grace. A table runner in colors I loved. Creating instead of constantly giving. Making instead of just paying. My hands remembered skills I'd set aside during the years of financial crisis management. The satisfaction of completed projects. Things finished. Made whole. On weekends, Margaret and I explored antique shops. Flea markets. Estate sales. Looking for treasures other people no longer wanted. I found a rocking chair with good bones. Painted it sage green. Set it by my bedroom window. My spot for morning coffee and evening reflection. A place to sit with my own thoughts. Without interruption. Without requests. Without anyone needing me to be anything other than myself. Thomas Avery called monthly to update me on Grace's trust fund. The investments were growing. Her college future secured. Her independence guaranteed. No access for her parents. No emergency withdrawals. No back doors for charm or manipulation. Some gifts require protection from the recipients' families. Winter deepened around my transformed house. Snow covered the yard where wildflower seeds waited. Patient. Enduring. Preparing for spring rebirth. Like everything else in my life now. I started cooking again. Real cooking. Not the endless meal preparation for ungrateful audiences. Food I wanted to eat. Flavors I enjoyed. Beef stew that simmered all afternoon. Homemade bread that filled the house with yeast and promise. Apple pie with crust I rolled myself. I ate at my kitchen table. Set with one place. Cloth napkin. Real silverware. Treating myself like company worth impressing. Dinner for one stopped feeling lonely. Started feeling luxurious. Caroline's lifestyle brand failed in January. I read about it online. Partnership dissolved. Investors withdrawn. Dreams rebranded as learning experiences. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not sympathy. Just the blank recognition of consequences arriving on schedule. Daniel's house went on the market in February. For sale signs sprouting like seasonal flowers. The mortgage payments I'd covered for 6 years finally catching up. They would start over somewhere smaller. Cheaper. More honest about their actual income level. Good. Reality is an excellent teacher. Harsh but fair. Grace kept me updated without being asked. Her parents were fighting more. Whispering less. The stress of actual budgeting straining their performance marriage. But she was thriving. Honor roll again. College applications submitted. Scholarship interviews scheduled. Her future brightening as theirs dimmed. Some gardens grow best when the weeds are removed. Spring arrived early that year. March sunshine calling my wildflowers from winter sleep. I watched from my kitchen window as green shoots pushed through soil. Tentative at first, then bold, then irrepressible. The neighbors stopped to admire the chaos of color erupting across my front yard. Mixed blooms in wild patterns. Beauty that couldn't be controlled or arranged. Mrs. Peterson from next door asked what I'd planted. Everything, I told her. Whatever wanted to grow. She laughed. Said it looked like freedom. Said she might try the same in her backyard. Permission spreading like pollen. Carried by wind and conversation to other women who'd forgotten they had choices. I sat in my rocking chair each evening. Watched the sun set through my floral curtains. Listened to the house settle around me. Content. Secure. Mine. This was what 73 looked like when you stopped performing for an audience that didn't appreciate the show. This was what life looked like when you chose yourself. When you planted seeds for your own spring instead of financing other people's gardens. Grace graduated valedictorian in June. I sat in the front row. Watched her accept awards for excellence. For character. For becoming the woman she'd chosen to be. After the ceremony, she found me in the crowd. Hugged me tight. Whispered thank you in my ear. For what? I asked. For showing me how to say no, she said. For teaching me that love doesn't mean yes to everything. For proving that strong women grow strongest when they stop bending for everyone else. I held her close. My granddaughter. My legacy. My proof that some investments pay dividends you can't measure in dollars. We drove home past the house with the for sale sign. Past the life they were leaving behind. Past the consequences they could no longer afford to ignore. To my house. Our house. The place where we'd learned that family is chosen daily. Earned through respect. Built on foundation stronger than blood or obligation. Where wildflowers bloomed without asking permission. Where women learned to say no. Where love finally meant what it was supposed to mean. Where I'd become who I was always meant to be. Finally. Completely. Unapologetically myself.